If we haven't met, my name is Shirley Pakdaman. I'm a licensed psychologist here in Los Angeles. And before I introduce Kevin, I just want to say I'm so happy to see every one of you here. I know it's not easy to be looking for someone to date and to be single in the city, and like a lot of times when we go to talks about dating, it can leave people feeling kind of like deflated or it seems kind of negative, and that's really not our intention for tonight. Every single one of you is beautiful, and you deserve to have happiness in your life, and it's amazing that you want to find a partner. As a psychologist, I'd be more concerned for you if you didn't care about finding a partner. So good job for being here and empowering yourself to pick up some tips.
Amen.
And hopefully be inspired a little bit. All right, so enough from me. I want to introduce my dear friend, Kevin Nahai. Kevin is a Persian Jewish speaker, a personal coach, and author from LA, LA native, correct?
Yes.
That's right. Who focuses heavily on dating and relationships. He also loves to talk to people about self-confidence, self-respect, and teaching effective communication, which I think is A+. So Kevin, tell us a little bit about your backstory and how you ended up doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you guys so much for being here. It means a lot to me. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. And thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for moderating the conversation. So my name's Kevin Nahai. My quick backstory is that when I was 19 years old, my entire life changed in a flash. I was, from one day to the next, diagnosed with an incurable stomach disease. I fell into a very, very deep depression. I struggled with anorexia. I struggled with being suicidal. I had panic attacks. And it wasn't until I was about 23 or 24 years old that I started to kind of climb out of the hole and be able to get my life together. And around that time, when some of the darkness, the cloud over my life started to clear, I had this realization, which was that all of my peers, people in their 20s and 30s, we were all struggling with the exact same things. I couldn't encounter anybody who didn't have some form of a relationship issue, anxiety, depression, a family issue, figuring out what they wanted to do with their career. And it was very confusing to me because this was supposed to be the best time of my life. I was in college, I was about to finish college, I was supposed to have like all of my glory years ahead of me. And I don't know if any of you relate, but my early 20s were actually a time that was filled with a lot of confusion and self-doubt and low confidence, even though I might have outwardly portrayed otherwise. And so I went on 2 missions. The first mission was to get my life in order, to learn how to take responsibility, to learn how to have successful and fulfilling relationships, to figure out what I wanted to do with my career, to discover purpose, make money, have strong friendships. And then my second mission was something that I promised myself. If I could figure that out, then I was going to start teaching other people how I did it. Not why it's important to do, but how to do it. Because everybody in this room knows that we should have relationships, we should be confident, we should respect ourselves. People who have high self-esteem, thank you. People who have high self-esteem live longer lives and, have a higher quality of life. But I kept running into this issue, which was that everybody was telling me how important this was, but nobody told me how to do it. So to that end, my intention for tonight is going to be as practical as possible. I don't want to give you any nebulous concepts about love and communication and respect and trustworthiness. You already know all of that stuff. I really want to tell you the keys that I've discovered. And over the last 3 years since I started coaching full-time, I have been able to make 91 successful marriages, engagements, or relationships with the clients that I've worked with. And I didn't do a single matchmaking, right? So I'm going to teach you my tips, and then you're going to go out there and find your person. Baruch Hashem.
Ooh, God bless. Okay. So you talked a little bit about why you're doing this talk tonight, but why are you so passionate about dating and relationships for this generation specifically?
Because one of the things that I discovered was that the message that our parents and grandparents' generation got was so different from the message that we got. And in some ways, that's great, but in some ways, that's been an enormous detriment. So what our parents and grandparents were taught was find a good partner and then figure out your lives together. What our generation has been taught is figure out your life, make money, get a career, then find a partner. Now, the upside of this is that we are much more established financially, intellectually, emotionally by the time we are ready to find someone. The downside is that if you start looking for a partner when you're 27, 30, 32, however long it takes you to get yourself, quote unquote, established, you are swimming upstream, essentially. And of all of the pain that I went through in my life, the strongest pain was feeling alone and feeling unloved and feeling confused and not knowing what to do. So I'm passionate about many things, but there's no greater beauty to me than seeing two people in love and having a fulfilling relationship. And if I can have a part in that, then it brings me the greatest fulfillment.
Okay, but let's get down to some practical advice. Okay, let's start with the basics. So how should a person go about figuring out what they want in a partner or a relationship? Does it just come with experience and time, or is there actually something people can do?
There's a lot that people can do. So there's something that I talk about, which is the experience myth. The experience myth is that you figure out what you want in a partner by gaining experience and by going out there and dating. And to some extent, yeah, you got to try different people and learn different personalities. But really, finding what you want in your partner, figuring out what is right for you, is an internal evolution. It's an internal operation. It's not an external search. So what that means practically is whenever I ask somebody, so what are you looking for, right? What do you want? What are your ideal things? What are you willing to tolerate? What are your non-negotiables? These very practical questions, which you should all spend time thinking about. The critical mistake that everybody makes is they start telling me about the other person. They immediately say, oh, I want someone who's this, who has these characteristics. But you've just skipped over the most important thing, which is telling me about you. Because who you are going to be compatible with is not based on what you want, it's based on what you need. And what you need is a reflection of your own emotional constitution. Does this make sense? So the internal...
What do you mean by emotional constitution?
Okay, so the things that make you tick, what your needs are, right? What makes you anxious versus what makes you feel comfortable. What's going to be a match for your personality? What matches the way that you communicate, right? So the message is, first, you have to learn what your nature is as a person. We can change our behaviors, but we cannot change our nature.
Yeah, so what you need to have your emotional needs met.
Absolutely.
Right? What kind of attention do you need? What kind of person would fulfill that role? Something that I actually love asking my clients and was really helpful even to ask myself is, what kind of role do I want to have, or what kind of person do you want to be in the relationship? What do you want someone else to bring out of you, ideally?
Absolutely. That's a great point. So the first thing is you should all ask yourselves, what is my nature? What are my emotional needs? And based on the answer to that question, half of the people who you are dating immediately get rooted out. And that's a great thing because it saves you so much time and energy, and you don't need to date all of them and gain the experience of dating all of them because you already know who is a match for you and who is not, because it's based on you. Once you have that figured out, again, before you start thinking, what do I want to get from a partner? The second question is, what do I want to give to a partner? And this really puts us in an incredible position of power. Because when we go to a date thinking, what can I get? What can I receive? Will this person give me what I want? Whether it's a house, whether it's money, whether it's a strong connection, whatever, right? All of your power is contingent upon their performance and upon what they have to offer. But if you come at the date from the perspective of what do I want to give, now the question switches to, is this a person who I want to give my all to? And that gives us so much choice. Because when I go on a date with you, now instead of thinking...
I'm not going on a date.
Okay, sorry. I was wishful thinking. When I go on a date with my friend Joe, who's married with 2 puppies, instead of thinking, is Joe going to do for me what I want, and is he going to give me the house in the hills, which of course he will, right? Now I'm asking myself, is Joe the person that I want to give all of my gifts to?
Okay, so that's a really interesting perspective. Like sometimes I like to think of, I have X, Y, Z to offer. Is this a person who wants that and appreciates that?
Absolutely.
Right? Is this person going to receive my gifts and appreciate what I have to offer or not?
Right. And I just want to say one other point about that, which is I have an analogy of an apple pie. The apple pie analogy goes like this. You bake somebody an apple pie, which I would not be doing because I can't bake, but you put your time...
Steak.
I can make you a steak, but I won't be baking anything. You bake somebody an apple pie from scratch. You put your love and your time and your effort into it, and you bring them the apple pie, and they look at it, they take a bite of it, and then they toss it in the trash. So what we do as human beings is we double down, and we go home and we bake them 2 apple pies, and we bring them the second apple pie.
It's so painful.
It is. It happens all the time,
Yeah.
right? And they take those 2 apple pies and they throw them in the trash. So the point of this analogy, and this is so important for everybody to understand, is you will not make somebody appreciate you by giving them more of what they already do not appreciate.
Yeah.
They didn't want the first apple pie. So why would you bake them 2? You're not going to make them appreciate you by giving them more of what they have shown you they don't appreciate.
So we hear a lot about what to look for in a relationship, like trust, honesty, respect, etc., blah, 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 right? What are the main pillars that really determine compatibility between 2 people?
Okay, so compatibility is a fascinating thing. There are 4 pillars, okay? The first one is the basics, which is what Shirley just said. Trust, honesty, respect, kindness, right? I don't need to tell you guys that because without those things, the relationship is a non-starter, okay? The next 3 are the ones that we overlook. The second one is values. You and your partner need to have the same values. Not similar, not kind of negotiable, the same. A relationship where the values are not shared will falter at the first blow of the wind. A relationship where the values are shared can outstand anything. Number 3 is that you have to have compatible communication styles. So if I'm a person who needs frequent check-ins and I like to text and I like to talk to you a lot, which I do, and you're a person who never checks their phone, we're not going to be a match. Our communication style doesn't have to be exactly the same, but it has to be complementary. Okay, because as we all know, the strength of a relationship is really the strength of the communication. And then number 4 is one that often gets overlooked as well, which is a feeling of safety. This is something we don't really talk about a lot. We talk about, are your values the same? Is your communication compatible? Do you trust them? Do you have a good sex life? Do their parents like you? Whatever. But what we don't really talk about is, do you feel safe in the relationship? So here's how you measure whether or not you feel safe in a relationship, because it's kind of an ephemeral thing, okay? Take a look at how you feel when you are with your partner. Chances are you're laughing, you're cuddling, you're eating pizza together, you're having a great time. Then compare that to how you feel when you are apart from your partner. Safety is measured by how you feel when you are apart from your partner, not how you feel by when you're with your partner. Because when we're together, it's all rainbows and butterflies, okay? If that partner leaves or you go home and you feel anxious and you feel like I'm walking on eggshells and I don't know the next time I'll hear from him or her and I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, then you don't feel fully safe in your relationship, chances are.
I want to go back to what you said about communication styles. I'm a firm believer in growth and that there are certain things that you can change in order to love your partner better. So do you think like these communication patterns can be permanently changed, or do you feel like they're fixed already and if there's changes like temporary?
So the values are fixed. You have to find somebody who has the same values. The communication style is malleable. The communication style is something you create together. Communicate about how you want to be communicated with. And the important thing about communicating is don't talk to your partner or the person you're dating the way you want to be spoken to. Talk to them the way they want to be spoken to, because that's the only way they will understand you. And their responsibility is to do the same thing for you. They have to speak your language.
Okay, so speaking about styles and language, I want you to tell us a little bit about attachment styles. Can you tell us, Kevin, how attachment styles, like what they are in general for those who might have not heard of this concept before, and how they impact the dynamic of a relationship?
Yeah, so this is another one that gets overlooked and is incredibly important. So basically, I mean, this is like, 100 years of psychology in 1 minute, so bear with me. But we have two primary attachment figures in life. The first one is our parents, or either parent, and then the second one is our romantic engagement, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And what happens is, depending on the amount of attention and love and affection your parents gave you when you were a kid, you're going to end up having one of 4 attachment styles. One of them is secure, the other is anxious, the third is avoidant, and the fourth is anxious avoidant. 50% of the population, believe it or not, is securely attached. And what that basically means is that they are comfortable with intimacy, they are good at communicating, they don't think inordinately about their relationships, they're confident in themselves, they have a secure base from which to date.
Oh, God bless.
I know. I couldn't believe that it's 50%, but it's true. Maybe I just think people are crazier than they actually are. 25% of the population is avoidant. So the avoidant people are the ones who, anytime they perceive that somebody is getting too close to them, they push away, right? They want intimacy, they want comfort, but they are too afraid to be hurt. They are too afraid that they will not get the love and attention that they need, which is what happened when they were a kid. 20% of the population, aka Kevin Nahai, is anxiously attached, which means that you're needy, you're clingy, you really care about your relationships, you think a lot about your relationships, you need a lot of attention and time and affection from your partner. And then there's 4 to 5% of the population, which is anxious avoidant. And the anxious avoidant are people who are constantly vacillating between those two extremes, and that's a very painful category to be in. But this is so important. It's so important to understand your attachment style, because if you're secure, you're great, you don't have to worry about it. You should read this book, Attached. It's by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. But look, if you are anxious or avoidant, you have a high likelihood that you are going to end up with the opposite. So anxious people tend to date avoidant people, and avoidant people you already said we're not dating, sorry.
We're not dating, and I earned secure. I fixed my attachment style.
Okay, so I'm going to use Joe again.
Okay.
All right, an anxious person like me ends up dating an avoidant person like Joe, even though he's married with 2 puppies. And basically, this is called the anxious avoidant trap. And it is a trap because, although it's like a cruel joke, it's diabolical, we both get our needs met. I have somebody to chase. I have somebody to constantly ask them, do you love me? Do you need me? Are you going to be there for me in the morning? And they have somebody from whom to distance. Okay? And so it's like a hamster wheel. It's like, Joe is dangling the carrot, and I'm just like chasing after him. Joe, will you love me? And then one day he gives me the carrot. Yes, I will love you, right? So I can relax. And then he goes back on his trend the next day of dangling the carrot, right? So it's a cruel joke because anxious people and avoidant people always date each other, but they are the worst possible match, okay? So the key to all of this is that you want to work on becoming as secure as possible. And if that's something that anybody needs help with, come up and talk to me after. One point to add on is you all should keep in mind that every relationship, every romantic relationship that you have will do one of two things. Very, very few relationships are neutral. Almost every relationship, 98% of them will do one of two things. It will either heal the wounds that you brought to the relationship, or it will open those wounds up and pour salt in them. So this is why we have to be careful about who we choose to invite into our lives, because either they can help heal the old wounds, and then we form a more secure base by getting our needs met, or they pour vinegar in those wounds, and then we walk out of that relationship potentially more damaged than when we came in. Not to scare you, but I think you guys get the idea.
All right, so what are some of the common themes you see, besides like mismatched attachment styles, that prevent people from finding their person? Are there any issues that you see across the board?
Yeah, I was hesitant to go into this because I don't want to talk about the reasons why we're all chronically single. But I think it's important. I don't say these things as like a gotcha. I don't, to point out what the problems are with us, but just so that you can be aware of a few patterns that, as a coach, I keep seeing reappearing that prevent us from finding our person. Okay, so the first one is just straight up bad decisions in our dating lives. That includes sleeping with too many people, which really does have an effect. It includes hanging on to the wrong relationship for too long. It includes not prioritizing your dating life and, just making choices that are not conducive to being in a long-term relationship, and most people are reasonable enough to know what those choices are. The second theme that I see is not working on ourselves. So what I said at the beginning about this being an internal evolution, if you are always pointing the finger at the other person and saying my relationships have never worked out because that person was crazy, that person was a narcissist, that person had OCD, that person was abusive, that person may have had all of those things. But a very, very empowering realization is that you chose that person. And that means that there is some, and again, I have been here. I did the same thing. And a very important realization is that nobody put a gun to your head and made you date that person. So there is something within you that needs to be healed. And once we heal those, then it opens up the possibility of us to find the person we're really meant to be with. And then the third theme that I see all the time is a concept called maximizing versus satisficing. Okay? Maximizers and satisficers. The maximizers are the ones who need tens across the board. He or she needs to have an excellent career, the best family, tall, green eyes, great friends, no problems, no divorced parents, you name it, right? When we try to maximize across all categories, we essentially price ourselves out of the market. We preclude ourselves from finding a good person because our expectations exceed what is out there and available.
Yeah, real people.
Exactly. We're all real people. We all have problems. We all have pasts, right? So we have to make room for that. The satisficers are the ones who find somebody who is good enough. And when I say the phrase good enough, people always go, oh, like it's this bad word. Good enough is rare, you guys. Good enough means that you have an incredible connection with somebody, you share the same values, you create a life together, you have a shared vision of the future. That's really rare. So good enough does not mean that you're settling.
Yeah, good enough means good enough. Yeah.
It means you're smart.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked a little bit about, things that don't work, but I'm just going to ask you one more question about the doesn't work category. What are 3 or 4 not so obvious red flags that people should look out for in the beginning stages of dating?
Great question. So we all know the obvious red flags, right? major temper. Yeah. Not over their ex, emotionally compromised, alcoholic, temper, whatever, okay? But then there are some not so obvious ones. I'm going to tell you 4, okay? Number 1 is inconsistency. Somebody who is here one day, gone the next. Mixed messages. They're hot and cold. No matter who you are, that's going to drive you crazy if you like the person. Number 2 is speed. If the person is moving way too quickly or way too slowly, big red flag, right? Which has to do with consistency. Speed, appropriate speed, is an indicator of stability. And then the other 2 are red flags not in them, but red flags in you. And this is really amazing to me. So the first one is, if you find that you want to fix or save or change the person you are dating.
I see a lot of head nods.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of project people in this.
Yeah. How do you think I came up with all this stuff? It's because I was a person in this audience.
Were you a project person?
Oh, yeah.
Did you find a project?
Yeah, I was Captain Save a Girl.
Oh, no.
You know? It's like I'm in the ocean trying to find all of the broken women and like bring them onto my ship. Please, I'll give you food and water.
Apple pie.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so red flag number 3 is a red flag in you, which you may not be aware of until you're dating somebody, right? Because we practice all of this stuff when we're dating someone. And that's if you feel the need to fix or save them. An addendum to that one is, if I ask you, so what's keeping you in this relationship? And you say, oh, I feel really bad for them. Like, I don't know what they're going to do if I leave them.
Oh, no.
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
No, I mean, I've had people in therapy, and they said things so extreme as, I'm afraid the person will, like, God forbid, like, kill themselves by suicide.
I know.
If I leave them.
Or they'll fall apart.
They will fall apart. I can't leave them. And yes, that person has a problem if they would become suicidal, but you also have a problem for not finding a way out.
Right. It sounds brutal, but their well-being, physically, mentally, emotionally, once the relationship is over, is not your responsibility. And I don't mean that in an insensitive way. I mean that in the way that you have to give them the dignity of doing their own healing. And it's not your job to save them. And red flag number 4 seems like a red flag in them, but it's one in us, which is when you are constantly rationalizing somebody's behavior that you don't like. For example, they don't text me back on time. Oh, they're just like so busy. Like, I'll be fine with it, right? Or they drink a little bit too much for your liking. Oh, they just had like a stressful day. It's a red flag in you when you keep noticing behaviors that you are not a fan of and you rationalize them. You justify them and you try to explain them away.
Okay, good point. Point taken. Do you believe, okay, so you're talking about someone being good enough, right? And I was actually listening to a talk today where the person was talking about, should you date someone for their potential because you see potential in them, or should you just try to find somebody who's already like where they need to be, you know? And I thought the answer was really profound. It's like, well, what if they never meet that potential that you decided for them, right? Then you will always be disappointed. But that brings me to another...
I have a lot to say about that.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, it's okay.
No, say it.
Okay, so something I hear from women all the time is he doesn't need to be rich, he just needs to be ambitious. So, wouldn't that be dating his potential to one day be successful? And the answer is no, because if he is ambitious now, that is a characteristic that he has now. Do not date somebody's potential to become what you want them to be. Date who they are right now. Because the strongest way to predict the future is to look at somebody's behavior and their traits right now in this moment.
Okay, so do you believe that two people need to be, like, quote-unquote, complete individually before entering into a relationship that has a chance to be healthy?
Absolutely not. This is a huge myth that only surfaced in popular psychology within the last 10 to 20 years, which is the idea that you have to be 100% on your own as an island, and then you bring this other island who's 100% on their own, and the two of you form one island, and you're just two palm trees swinging in the wind together. That's complete BS. I don't know who came up with this nonsense, okay? If it was a requirement to be emotionally self-sufficient in order to be in a relationship, that would be the end of humanity. Because why would we choose to be in a relationship? It's a lot of work. You get into a relationship because that person meets needs that you cannot satisfy on your own. And that's the beauty of the whole thing. And I get so fired up about this because dependency is a biological, emotional, and spiritual necessity. It's not a choice. And dependency is not a bad word. It's a beautiful thing. So absolutely no. Look, if you're a complete wreck, if your life is in shambles, don't get into a relationship. But that's...
Don't enter the dating market.
Exactly.
Spare us.
But that's, this is all within reason, right? Like, so that's self-explanatory. But look, if you're functioning at 60 or 70% and, you have a pretty secure base and you're good and for the most part you're happy, like, of course you don't need to be 100% on your own in order to date.
Well, what about the age-old question, the spark, right? Do two people need to have, like, intense chemistry in order to have a successful relationship?
This is going to disappoint a lot of people. No. You do not. It's nice. It's a bonus if you have intense chemistry, if you have passion, if you have lust, if you have the spark. But it is not a necessity in order to have a stable and secure and lasting relationship with somebody.
Why not?
Well, I was about to say why not. The reason is that at a certain point in any relationship, loving somebody becomes a choice every single day. You can have the most incredible spark that you've ever experienced. A year, 5 years, 10 years into the relationship, that spark will fade. And at that point, loving them every morning becomes a conscious choice. It becomes something that you will to do. So whether or not that spark is there initially, it's nice if it's there, but it's not a necessity.
Okay. But speaking of chemistry, you've been an outspoken proponent of avoiding physical intimacy in the beginning stages of a relationship. Why? It's so fun.
I know, it's all fun and games until somebody, walks out. And then it's just really sad. Okay, so when Shirley says avoiding physical intimacy, I think what you're referring to is sex.
That's right.
Okay, because it's like, to me it's okay. Obviously depends on your values and like your religiosity. But to me it's okay if like you kiss, you hold hands, you touch, that kind of thing. But I'm an outspoken proponent of not having sex until a commitment has been established or until you are on the way to a commitment. And there are three main reasons. Number one is usually sex before commitment results in one person losing interest, one person losing respect for the other, or three, physical intimacy rather than emotional intimacy takes the center stage and becomes the focus of the relationship. Now, here's the important thing. I cannot tell you what to do with your bodies or when you should have sex. I would never presume to insert myself in that way. I am not a stickler for when people have sex. I am a stickler for the circumstances under which they choose to get physical. And what I mean by that is, if you're not dating seriously, go do whatever you want, right? It's not for me to tell you. But if you are dating seriously, if you're dating for marriage, then you want to get physical under the circumstances that include emotional intimacy, commitment or leading to it, a lot of trust, a lot of honesty, a lot of communication, right? Because if those circumstances are not there, if that foundation is not there, then as I said, usually what happens is one person loses interest, one person loses respect, or the physical intimacy becomes what you guys focus on and you don't get to know each other's spirit.
Yeah, it's really tricky. Okay, is it important to be financially stable and have a good career before entering into a serious relationship? Is it necessary?
So this is like the chemistry one. It's nice if you're financially stable before entering a career. It's a bonus, but it is not necessary. And the reason is what I was telling you, what I was talking about before, which is the difference between our parents' and grandparents' generation and the message they got versus the message that we got.
Got it. Okay. Let's talk about virtual dating for a moment. Everybody raise your hand if you love dating apps. Yeah. Nobody?
Come on, I know you guys are using them.
All right. What are your thoughts on dating apps?
Well, I'm actually a spokesperson for Hinge, so...
Yeah, right.
So my answer about dating apps is very simple, which is dating is hard enough. Don't do something that you hate. If you hate dating apps, if they take the wind out of your sails, if they leave you feeling deflated, if they give you a scarcity mindset, then delete them. You don't need them. I don't care how shy you are. I don't care how much of a homebody you are. I don't care how few prospects there are out there. There's a million ways to meet people, and dating apps are not absolutely essential to your success. But a lot of people feel that dating apps give them more options. They're exciting. I can chat with so many different people, right? We all know, a dozen people who met their partner and got married from a dating app. So if they work for you, use them. If you really don't enjoy them, then don't keep doing something that you don't enjoy, because it's just going to burn you out.
Right. So not obligatory to be on dating apps.
Not at all.
Yes. There are plenty of ways to meet people, right? Like...
There are plenty of ways to meet people like this. You can get set up through your rabbi or through somebody in your community. You can go out there in the world and meet people at a coffee shop. You can join different programs. I mean, there's a whole bunch of options,
Okay. Oh, I love this question because I think that you and I might differ on this one. Is it better to date one person at a time and focus your effort on them, or date a few people and not put all your eggs in one basket?
Why are we going to differ on this question?
Well, I think that you have a particular style, and my answer would be it depends on you and your style. So for some people, yes, date one person at a time. For other people, it's actually kind of, healthier to take less pressure off each individual situation and date like a couple people, not everybody, but maybe like 2 or 3 people, and then decide if you like somebody best. If somebody really stands out, if you have a connection, then you would break off the other ones pretty early. That's how I think.
So, point taken, and I completely agree that it does depend on who you are and what feels best to you. You should always do what brings you the greatest peace. But if I had to give a rule, I would say that it is always better to date one person at a time and focus your energy and effort on that person so that you can actually get to know them. And the reason is due to something called the paradox of choice. The paradox of choice is a concept in actually consumer psychology that states that the more options we have for any one choice, the less satisfied we are with whichever selection we make. So if you're dating 3 or 4 different people at once, you are intrinsically comparing them all to each other, and you're finding their flaws. You're not finding their attributes, right? And that makes you less satisfied, naturally, with whichever one that you choose. Having said that, I don't think that every time you go on one date, you have to be exclusive with that person. So I have something called the 3-date rule, which is if you're dating 2 people at once, you have up to 3 dates with each of them to decide who you want to focus on. Okay? So if I'm dating, Sarah and Jackie and Allison, I get 9 dates total. If I need them all, I probably shouldn't need them all.
Probably would.
Right? But I'm giving the rule for some leg room, okay? I get 3 dates with Jackie, maybe 1 date with Allison, and 1 date with Sarah. If after 1 to 3 dates with each one, I can't decide who I want to focus on, then either I'm being too picky or I don't like any of them or, so forth and so on.
Okay. Do you believe it's okay for women to approach men and ask them out?
Okay, look, I'm a pretty traditional and conservative guy when it comes to like dating rules, if you couldn't tell. But I am 100% a proponent of women asking guys out. I have never seen the problem with it. I was telling a friend of mine this, actually. I have been asked out once in my life.
Aww.
There has been one woman in my life who came up to me and said, I would love to go on a date with you. And she wasn't the right match for me, but I said to her,
because
sorry.
She asked you, or
no, no, she just wasn't.
Okay.
She didn't like my dog, so that immediately put her out of the running.
Incompatible values.
Exactly. But I said to her, I am so floored that you did this, and I wish that more women felt empowered to do this, because the worst thing that can happen is that they say no. And honestly, guys, we have a lot of pressure. I'm not trying to paint a sob story here, but it's hard to be a guy and constantly be asking girls out and constantly be told, I have a boyfriend, or you're too short, or you have a beer belly, or whatever. I'm only 5'8", you guys. It's really a struggle out here.
Tough out there for a 5'8" Jewish man.
Exactly.
Okay, and I think the way that she said it was so nice. I would love to go on a date with you. Wow.
I loved it.
So direct and cool. I like it.
And look, if it's not your style, that's totally okay, right? Again, do whatever is going to bring you the greatest peace. But yes, it's 100% okay and actually encouraged in my school of thought.
Okay, tell us your analogy of the pilot and the co-pilot.
Okay, so this is one that kind of shakes people up. I want you to think about an airplane. A relationship is like the cockpit of an airplane, okay? If you have two pilots who are trying to fly the plane and ensure that everybody gets there safely, they're going to butt heads. If you have two co-pilots who are each focused on the minutia of the airplane functionality, you are also going to crash the plane. You need one person with clear leadership and decisiveness whose overall function is taking care of the relationship and the family, etc. And you need another person whose overall function is taking care of all of the day-to-day stuff. Now, the important thing is one is not more important than the other. The woman can be the pilot, the breadwinner, whatever. The guy can be the co-pilot, stay-at-home dad, takes the kids to school, makes their lunch, whatever. They are both necessary. It doesn't matter what gender you are, okay? Also, the roles might switch according to the domain, okay? So let's say I'm terrible with finances and math, which I am. My wife is going to be the one who takes care of the bills and the taxes and accounting and makes sure that we don't go under financially, okay? But let's say that I am really good at making plans and I am really good at directions and making sure that we get to our destination safely. That is my domain. And she can't be sitting in the seat next to me nitpicking at me and, trying to tell me where to go. If you have a 50-50 equal partnership in every domain, the plane is going to crash because you're always going to be inserting your opinions. Okay? So both partners need to be deferential. You need to defer to the other partner based on the domain.
So based on their strengths and what they're good.
Exactly. Okay? So, choose for yourself. In most domains, do I want to be the co-pilot or do I want to be the pilot? That will make your relationship so much stronger and it's just so much easier to tell what personality type is going to be a match for you.
I listened to a podcast episode where you explained your concept of this myth of being needy. What is that?
So the myth of being needy is that expressing your emotional needs and desires to somebody means that you are needy. It's a huge myth, and it's something that so many people are terrified of. And it pains me to see. As long as your needs are within reason, which most of you know what that is, right? If you're banging down somebody's door at 3 o'clock in the morning, if you're texting them 5 times an hour, if you're calling them 50 times a day, right, then we know that that's unreasonable, right? But as long as your needs are within reason, then the only person who will consider you needy is somebody who is incapable of meeting your needs. You are only as needy as your unmet needs. Okay? So never, ever, ever be afraid of being needy or desperate or clingy. I shouldn't say this. I shouldn't double text. I shouldn't ask for this because it comes across as desperate. My clients say this to me all the time, and it pains me to see. The other thing I want you to keep in mind is if I don't tell the person, how will they know? And if I don't ask the person, how will I know? So
if they're capable or not.
Absolutely. If I don't tell them what I need, how will they know? By osmosis, by ESP, right? And if I don't ask them about themselves or where they're at or what they're thinking, how will I know? So much of the pain and desperation and anxiety that we feel in our relationships can be solved immediately by just asking, right? It's better to have a 5-minute uncomfortable conversation that could save 5 years of pain.
Oh, true. So we're in a temple, so this is a really appropriate question, and I actually really love this question. How much of finding our partner is really within our own control? Isn't some of it up to luck, timing, God's plan?
Yeah, some of it is up to luck, grace, timing, God's plan.
God.
What's that?
God,
yeah.
That's where I'm betting on.
I was saving the best for last.
God.
Yes. God, are you listening? We're all nice Jews. Please help us find our partners. Hashem. I see many beautiful women in this audience. Please. Okay. Yes, a lot of it is up to all of that. But there is more in our control than we give ourselves credit for. There's also more in our control than we take personal responsibility for. One thing that I often hear is, if God wants me to be married, he will send my person. And to that I say, God is only going to work as hard as you work. I'm no expert on God. This is my personal belief. God is only going to help you as much as you help yourself. So we can't abdicate responsibility and say, I can sit in my bedroom and never go out on dates. I can make poor decisions. I can keep going back to my ex. I can...
Don't go back to your ex.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And if God wants me to be married, he'll send my person. Right? Like, it's not a stork dropping off a baby. You have to put in the effort.
So in other words, you do your best, God does the rest?
Hey!
Yeah, I like that.
I like that. Yeah, basically, like, we don't get to say, I hate this question, why are you single, right? But when somebody asks you, why are you single, which hopefully they won't because it's a stupid question.
I hate that question.
Me too.
Rude.
We don't get to say, oh, it's not within God's plan, or it's not the right time, or whatever. You get to say that once you've done everything in your power. Once you truly feel that you're the best version of yourself, then you can let it go and surrender it to God, I believe.
Okay, so what are a few things that people in this room can do right now to get them closer to finding their person?
Well, first of all, everything that we have spoken about tonight, I hope you guys feel is practical and tactical and something that you can take away and start to put into practice. But just for this final question of what can we all do right now? Ultimately, it all comes down, I don't need to tell you, go on dates, meet people, put yourself out there, blah, blah, blah. You understand all that. Ultimately, what this all comes down to is how much we respect ourselves. The quality of the people who come into our lives will always be a reflection of the quality of the standards we have set for ourselves. And when I say standards, I'm not talking about standards of thought, right? Because we can all say, I have really high standards in my mind. I hold myself to a high standard. I expect to be respected. But if your actions, if your behaviors are incongruous with those standards, then you actually have low standards. So the number one thing that everybody can do starting right now is look at these 5 areas. Okay, these are the 5 definitive measures of how much you respect yourself, which in turn will determine who comes into your life and whether or not they will respect you and how they will treat you. Who you date, who you choose, how you spend your time, what you spend your time doing, who your friends are, who you surround yourself with, how you speak to yourself, your internal dialogue, and finally, how you treat your body, which includes who you allow into your bedroom. It includes what you eat. It includes anything that's physical and spiritual, because our bodies are the containers of our soul. Look at those 5 areas. Right now, starting tonight, you can level up in those 5 areas. You can change how you spend your time. You can change who your friends are. You can start to choose better people who align with your values. You can change how you speak to yourself, right? That is one of the things that I help people with a lot. And you can change how you are treating your body. And it's this incredible thing. It happens, I see it 7 days a week, and it never ceases to amaze me, that when we change the standards of behavior according to which we are adhering, the world changes for us. All sorts of opportunities start falling in your lap. You start getting better and better people, right? So set higher standards for yourself and behave in accordance with those standards, and you will see that reflected in who comes into your life and the opportunities that you are provided. And with that, I just want to echo what Shirley said at the beginning, which is that you are all beautiful, intelligent, you have so much potential, and I am so proud to know each and every one of you. I'm so grateful that you came to listen. God bless you, and may we all find our person, have healthy and happy families, and live long, fruitful lives. God bless you.
Really enlightening and uplifting and practical. We have a little bit of time right now for some questions from you all. And if you ask a question, could you please just stand up? You don't have to take the mic, but just
Sorry, I'm shy. Okay, you mentioned knowing your nature. So I just wanted to understand a little bit, when you say knowing your nature, what is an example of like what your nature is, or how do you?
Okay, so an example is, my nature is that I'm an extreme extrovert. I need to be around people. I have a big personality. I'm loud. I can be obnoxious, right? So somebody who would be a match for me is somebody who is kind of quiet and reserved and shy, and they don't bring the intensity that I do, right? Every time I try to date an extrovert like me, it doesn't work out because our natures are too similar, okay? So you want to date somebody with whom your values are the same, but your personality is not necessarily the opposite, but they complement each other. If I was more in the middle, then I could date somebody who was in the middle. But because this is my nature, I cannot date somebody who is also an extreme. Another example is that no matter how secure I try to become, I am always going to need a lot of communication and attention in my relationship. I'm like a puppy. I just do. It's been that way since I was born, right? I cannot be with somebody who is not that affectionate. I need to be with somebody who is effusive and who shows a lot of outward affection. Point blank, done. No negotiation, that's what I need, right? So you have to look at what you need, what's your personality, what are your values, what is important to you, what feels good to you, and then, Lindsay, do not question it. Do not go home and say, oh, well, maybe if I was more this way, or maybe I should try being more this way. No, that doesn't work, right? Do not change who you date. Do not change who you are to match who you date. Change who you date to match who you are. Thank you.
So you said there's a million ways to meet other people in LA. Can you illustrate a few of them?
First of all, I think rabbis and matchmakers are an excellent path. Number 2 is my personal favorite, which is setups through friends or family. Number 3 are singles events like this, which there are a good amount of. Number 4 is joining communities, like if you like to hike, or if you like to play music, or if you like to play beach volleyball, joining things where you have shared interests. Any others that come to mind for you?
Go to a bar.
Well, you can go to a bar, but
Going to meet somebody at a bar or restaurant is actually not a number one way to meet people. Neither is the gym. The gym is like really low on the list. Actually, right now, currently, number 1 is dating apps. That could be because of the pandemic. Number 2 is met them through a friend or family member, met them at a party or whatever. And I think like bar or restaurant is much lower on the list.
less than 20% of long-term relationships originated at a bar.
Sadly.
Where are these lists from?
The internet.
Dr. Google. Leah, does that help?
Yes.
You said the values have to be the same. Can you give us examples of values?
Yes, she said, can I give examples of values? Okay, so your politics, believe it or not, are a reflection of your values, okay? So if you lean moderate, progressive, conservative, whatever, politically, there is usually an underpinning to that about how you see the world and what you believe is the way people should be treated and should, what a society should provide for its citizens and so forth and so on. Another value is religiosity, how religious you want your home to be, you want your children to be. Another value is education, how important it is to you that your partner or your kids be educated. But, I'm sorry, was your name Michelle? Yeah. Michelle, the best tip that I can give you, if you're thinking about is something a value or is it a preference, is what would I teach my 4 or 5-year-old son or daughter is important. What are the teachable moments that I would stop in the street and kneel down and say, sweetie, when this happens, this is what we want to do, right? That's a value.
Thank you.
What other questions do you guys have? Yes?
Where is the line between, like, let's say you're dating someone and you're trying to figure out if you, have the same communication styles or whatever. Where exactly is the line between, working on it to see if you can communicate, work towards communicating better or, changing the dynamic of the relationship versus trying to, change the person? I feel like sometimes that there's an overlap and it gets confusing. Should you keep pursuing it and trying to figure out if it's gonna eventually work out?
What's your name?
Sarah.
Sarah? Yeah. Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. So the question is, where is the line between getting somebody to change their behavior in order to communicate with you in a more effective way and starting to try to change who they are? Is that right? Okay, so this is an excellent question, and sometimes that line is hard to find. In general, my rule is you bring it up once, then you give them a few weeks or a month and see if there's a change. You bring it up twice, then you give them a week or 2 and you see if there's a change. You bring it up a third time and then you see 2-3 days if there's a change. If after the third time that you have reminded somebody that something is very important to you, they are not changing, that is who they are, and they will default back to that.
How do you know at what point to change your behavior versus where is it leading into I'm changing who I am?
Okay, that's a great follow-up. So if the change feels extremely strenuous, it is something that you have to do. It's a chore, right? I once had a girlfriend who I used to ask her in this fashion, hey, when you're going into a meeting or you're not going to be available for the next 6 to 8 hours, would you mind just letting me know? It sits well with me. I used to be ashamed to ask that question. Now, I encourage people to, if that's what you need, say it, right? And it was so hard for her to do this. She just doesn't check her phone, right? So she would always say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, like I just forgot again. Like it's just, and then a couple of times she would do it and then she would fall off, right? So I was actually trying to change her nature because it was too strenuous for her to make that change, right? Also, if it feels like, oh, I guess I want to do this for my partner, but it's like annoying, I don't think I should have to, I think it's stupid, right? Then, you might be trying to alter your nature. When your partner asks you, hey, can you do this for me? You should be excited. Even if, you're not gung-ho about cleaning the dishes before you go to bed, like that sucks to do. You should be excited to help them in a way that feels good to them.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions.
Yeah, look, just because you have an incredible connection with somebody does not mean you are meant to be with them. And just because somebody is perfect on paper does not mean you are meant to be with them. All right, we got 2 more minutes. Robin.
For like a first
Can you stand?
date. Oh, yeah, just like practical advice, like on a first date, are there like topics or questions that you would think are really important to you?
Yeah, what are the important things to address on a first date? First of all, always state your intention and ask the other person's intention, right? So what are you looking for? Why are you on Hinge? Basically, why are we on this date, right? And you don't have to say, break out the wedding bells, I'm looking to get married tomorrow, I want 4 kids, Eventually you'll say that, but if you are looking for a marriage, you should say, yeah, I am looking for a strong connection with somebody with whom I have shared values. I want to be in a serious relationship that will be on the road to marriage. There is no shame in saying that, and you save yourself so much time. A couple of other important things. Look, you don't want to spend the whole day talking about like how good the pasta is, or like, did you see Thor? Okay. A couple of other important things to ask are about the person's values, right? What are some of the things that are important to you? Kind of how do you see your life within the next few years? Not to test them, but out of genuine curiosity, right? Does that make sense?
Do you feel like there's topics that are like off limits?
No, I don't feel that there's any topic that should intentionally be avoided. And I don't feel that there is any topic that you have to hammer it down by the end of the first date, right? Let the conversation flow naturally. That is how we build vulnerability and connection. Yeah. Let's take one more question. Ryan.
Regarding dating multiple women or men at the same time, can you...
Are you dating multiple women or men?
I plead the fifth. Can you please tell us, like, if you're dating one person, how many days, like, let's say they're not available for a week or 2 weeks, how much of a chance should we give them to become available to date a second and third time? Because otherwise, those 9 dates could really prolong to, like, 2 months.
Sure. So, first of all, instead of giving them a chance or not, you should communicate with them and say, hey, do you have room in your life to date? I'm the type of person who likes to date one person at a time, and therefore I want to make a concerted effort. But if you're in residency or, you're studying for the bar or whatever, and you just can't do that, that's okay, but just let me know so I know like what to expect. And then in terms of like sort of a time frame, I believe that when, within the first month, you should go on minimum 1 date a week. Within the second month, you should start going on probably 2 dates a week. Within the third month, you start having like more FaceTimes and phone calls and, seeing each other more often. And if you're at month 3 and the person you haven't had the conversation of are we boyfriend and girlfriend, right? Then you've kind of got a red flag. I believe that after 3 months of dating somebody, if you have been dating them consistently, you should know whether you guys want to be in a relationship or not. Yes, sir. What's your name? Nice to meet you, brother.
One thing you didn't really talk about is physical attraction. Talk about all emotional, psychological baggage one brings to the table. But the question is, how important is physical attraction in the relationship? And if someone should somewhat suppress it or ignore it and try to build a relationship without it.
Okay, This answer is politically incorrect. I apologize in advance. If you're a man, most of the time, physical attraction is very, very important. Most men, not all, okay? Don't rake me over the coals, but most men, if you are not attracted to the person that you're dating, man, woman, whatever, within the first 60 seconds of meeting them, there's a very, very small chance that your attraction will grow. For women, generally speaking, their attraction can grow over time as they start to become attracted to a person's mind, as they start to feel safe, as they start to feel emotionally connected. Typically, female attraction is more flexible and can grow over time, as opposed to male attraction, which is much more fixed. Okay? And I know that this is not like a nice gendered thing to say, but it's just the truth. Okay? Having said that, physical attraction, whether it's there at the beginning or it's there in the middle, is very important. If you look at your partner and you feel like I could never be intimate with this person, no matter how perfect they are on paper, it's not going to work. Let's close out the night. Thank you so much, Brianna. And thank you guys all for being here. And thank you, Shirley, my dear friend and beautiful moderator. Thank you so much for doing this with me.